Hi guys! Russia is a huge country, known for its national color. Many foreigners who came from other countries do not get tired of being surprised by the way of life of Russians, their traditions and mentality. What are the advantages and disadvantages of living in Russia? I will tell you about it today in this video. The Russian Federation is a country that covers a huge territory and which is considered the most populated country in Europe. Russians predominate among the population, but Tatars, Ukrainians, Kazakhs and Chechens also live in the country. Of course, the level and way of life in Moscow and in other cities is different. The life of every Russian is weekdays and weekends. Working days are busy with everyday issues, attending school, kindergarten, universities, employment at work, travel by transport, shopping for food, rare evening walks. Weekends are attempts to arrange an entertaining and interesting leisure. Arrange visits to exhibitions, parks, cultural attractions, clubs and restaurants. Let's start with the disadvantages of living in Russia, and then write in the comment whether such disadvantages are significant for you. The first, in Russia the middle class is not as rich as in the USA and Western Europe. There are rich people who are able to spend millions of dollars on an apartment in the center, and there are poor people who barely have enough for food and living. And the solid middle class is not as much as a percentage of the total population as in other countries. The second, climate. Yes, it can be noted as one of the disadvantages, since in most part of the country a temperate continental and sharply continental climate prevails, with warm and even hot summer, short spring and autumn, and cold winter, especially in eastern part of the country from the Urals to the Far East. The third, the average salary in Russia is $1,045. Here, of course, it is difficult to attribute to obvious disadvantages. Since I said earlier, it is correct to evaluate any figures in terms of purchasing power parity. In Russia, you can buy much more goods and services with this money than in the USA and Europe. The fourth, low level of pensions in country. Currently, the average pension in Russia is $350, but the government promises that in just 5 years the pension will be increased significantly. True, it is worth nothing. The pensioners have a lot of different benefits, ranging from a 50% discount on utility bills to free travel in public transport and a free flight by plane to a place of rest and back within the country once every 2 years. We have finished talking about the disadvantages. Now let's talk about the advantages of living in Russia. The first, country was built on the collapse of Soviet Union and for many years has been trying, using the legacy of the empire, to build its economy, political system, achieve development in the technological field, industry and culture. Because everyone will find something to do. There are no problems with working in the big cities. Of course, things are a little worse in the province, so those who strive for prosperity are trying to move to big cities. There is always work in the markets, in the courier service, in the restaurant, in the office. Therefore, every year people come to Russia to work from almost all countries of the former USSR: Ukraine, Armenia, Moldova, Uzbekistan. Second, many foreigners say that life in Russia is interesting because you constantly need to try yourself in different areas. While, for example, in the United States, specialized in one field are highly valued. So there are law specializations in family law, criminal law, administrative law, and so on. In Russia, being a lawyer means being a generalist. You can try yourself in all branches of law. If you are an ordinary manager today, then it is possible that tomorrow you will move to work in another industry and study it. There is no single scenario for success. You need to constantly try yourself in something and develop. The third, weak competition in business. In order to open a business in Russia, as in other countries, you need a lot of money. But still, due to the fact that there is no particular competition in many industries, you can build a good business with minimal effort and with a quick payback. The fourth, Russia is a working country. In every Russian city, there is a place to take a walk. Parks, squares, forests. To get from point A to point B, in any case, you have to walk a little, and this is good for health. In addition, Russia is a country with a lot of attractions. For example, in the USA, they go very little and spend most of their time in transport. We also have well-developed public transport and people walk a lot. The fifth, internet access. In big cities, in almost every cafe and snack bar, in the park and square, even in the transport, there is free internet. We pay very little for internet. Russia ranks 12th in the world in terms of the cheapness of the internet. The sixth, good and cheap public kindergartens and schools. Gardens are not completely free because parents pay extra. But believe me, it is not more than $100. If you don't like it, send the child to a private kindergarten or school. There is no problems in this. Then medicine. The Russians don't pay insurance. Our employer takes on this responsibility and therefore consider it free. There is a disadvantage of Russian state insurance. The Russians don't have the opportunity to refuse it and choose some other one for themselves, only if they additionally buy another insurance policy. In Russia, the insurance business is generally rather poorly developed, but there is an advantage. Quite a lot is included in insurance, and absolutely everyone can be sure that they can get at less minimal medical assistance and an ambulance. Next, delicious food. In Russia, very tasty products, as they are mainly grown on farms. Unlike other developed countries which have many supermarkets, Russians can go to the market and buy homemade milk, cheese, cottage cheese, meat, vegetables, berries, and all this for a little money. And one more, it is heat. Surprised? But I was not mistaken. Heat is not on the street, but in houses and apartments where there is central heating. And it is almost everywhere, and in winter in the homes of Russians it is not just warm but often very hot, despite the terribly cold outside. So life in every country has its advantages and disadvantages, and Russia is not exception. This is a country very rich in natural resources, which can be proud of the development of industry, transport, medicine, education, business and economy. In big cities you can find good jobs with high earning, which will help improve the quality of life. So guys, if you like this video, like it, subscribe to my channel. See you soon, bye bye.